Facebook, I posted something about a Russian jazz musician named Igor Buttman. Mr. Buttman is a supporter and friend of Mr. Putin. He is very closely aligned with him. And he has spoken out in favor of the they're not Soviet anymore, the Russian invasion, the first one of the Ukraine. I guess it was 7 or 8 years ago. They didn't totally go into the country, but they took over some of the land. Mr. Buttman supported this, and there were some demonstrations in the Boston area by Ukrainians. Buttman showed up, screamed at these people, because he was in total support of his friend Putin. He threatened them. Afterwards, he sent them threatening letters. Mr. Buttman is a thug, like his friend, Mr. Putin. I, for one, can't listen to someone's music. I can't experience their creativity if they're so heavily involved in the decimation of human rights. You know, I've been involved with jazz for a long time. I've met some. When I was a kid, I idolized musicians. I thought they were gods. I came to New York, I found out, no, they're not gods. They're people with the same strengths and weaknesses as the rest of us. The survivors of the human condition. And I found in my early days of getting to know musicians, some of them kind of bugged me. When I heard about some of their exploits. But I said, well, I love this music. I love the way they play. I'm going to separate the man or the woman from the music. And I've done that for the most part, except when it comes to human rights violations, except when it comes to massacring people like Putin has done in Russia and is continuing to do now. So if someone is a proponent of that type of behavior, that type of politics, that type of indignation, I'm against them. I'm going to speak out against them. In the case of Mr. Buttman, I didn't hear anything in his music that grabbed me anyway. I know that Wynton Marsalis was one of his supporters. I wonder if Wynton Marsalis still supports him. Each of us in this life makes a choice about whether or not we speak out on the things that matter to us. I'm not someone who judges people because everyone has to make this choice on their own. And I can't criticize someone who says, I just don't want to get involved. Nothing I can do about it. That's just the way the world is. I can't change that. There's other people who are activists, who go out into the streets. Some of us make movies. Some of us speak out on a consistent basis. And that's something that's driven me since I was a young man. I guess it's inherited or whatever set of circumstances came about to turn me to give birth to the man that I am, my consciousness. So I've been doing this all my life. I guess you might say I'm outspoken. And it's not always been received in a positive way. The internet started in the 60s, but it was really around 93, 94, 95 that it really started to take off with the development of the platform, the World Wide Web. Now, I jumped on the internet immediately. I was fascinated by it. And a few years after I got on, I started to do a blog, probably the first jazz blog. I guess it was 96, 95 or 96. It was called Bird Lives, where as the pariah, I posted these impassioned diatribes about the injustices of the music business. Now, not that many people on the internet at that time, and also not a lot of content. So I nevertheless managed to draw an audience. And for a while, people didn't know who I was. I was just the pariah. I would go to jazz events, concerts, awards presentations, whatever. And people would, did you see what that guy, the Pariah, wrote? I wanted to say, that's me. But I chose to keep it quiet for a while. Eventually, I did reveal myself, but I picked up in that period, because of my outspoken views, some enemies. In fact, there are still some people in the world of jazz who don't really like me because of what I wrote, possibly about them. Well, how many years ago was that? 96, 06, 25 years ago, 26 years ago? That was a magic time for me, the 90s. I was part of the whole .com thing. But I continued to be outspoken on the internet, and certainly today, as a filmmaker, I just finished a film about anti-Semitism in America, and I expressed the viewpoint that the Holocaust really didn't have to happen, but one man's anti-Semitism empowered it. That man's name was Franklin D. Roosevelt.
The central mystery regarding FDR's immigration policy is this. Immigration was regulated by a quota system which set a cap on the number of people who could come to the U.S. in any given year from each country. The maximum from Germany during the 30s and 40s was about 27,000. And yet in 11 of FDR's 12 years in office, that quota was not filled. In most of those years, it was less than 25% filled. So the Roosevelt administration was deliberately suppressing immigration far below the limits that the law already allowed. That leads scholars to naturally look at what motivations might have driven such a policy. And in the case of FDR, the fact that he privately expressed great suspicion about Jewish immigrants in particular and about Jews in general leads to the conclusion that one of the reasons that his administration suppressed refugee immigration was because he personally did not want a large number of foreign Jews in the United States.
If Roosevelt had a different perspective, the United States would have gotten more involved in stopping the massacre, perhaps preventing it. But with a president who's anti-Semitic, what could happen? Well, what did happen is 6 million people died for no reason except the hatred of a certain group of people. And I can't help but draw the parallel between what's happening in the Ukraine today and what happened with the Nazis in Germany. At that time, it was Hitler who was driving it. This time, it's a man named Putin, a very, very evil man, a tyrant, a dictator, who kills his opponents or puts protesters in jail. It's very easy to find information about his misdeeds and what he's done. And what he's doing now, marching into a free country and taking over, trying to take over, just like Hitler did in Poland in 1939. Of course, now things are a little bit different. This is the first digital war. Maybe the Ukrainians can hold off the Russians. You know, the Russians had to pull out of Afghanistan. They weren't able to do what they wanted to there. I can't predict what might happen, but I do know that I have to speak out about this. Just like if I had been around during World War II, I would have spoken out about the Holocaust. I mean, America was largely silent. The New York Times was silent. And something happened called the Warsaw Ghetto. When the Germans marched into Poland with very little opposition, no resistance from any of the quote-unquote allies at that point, they came into the capital, Warsaw, and they rounded up all the Jews and they put them in a ghetto. And eventually they started shipping those Jews off to concentration camps.
I have that flashback when my mother and I walk on the street, and on the other side, SS officer was walking, and a child didn't have enough time to get out of his way, and he picked the child by his feet and knocked his head on a wall and dropped that bleeding dead body in a gutter.
There were about 7,000 Jews who hid out in the ghetto, who resisted, who made Molotov cocktails, who found armaments where they could and shot Germans, and a battle began between the Nazis and the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto. The world did nothing. Every night, the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto had a radio transmitter, and they would broadcast to the world, here's what's happening, help us, please, send us guns, send us knives, send us whatever you can, we're going to fight this. No one gave them anything. No one sent them anything. At that time, very few people talked about it. All those people died, either when the Nazi soldiers came into the Warsaw Ghetto, or when the remaining Jews who survived that assault ended up in concentration camps and were murdered. Now, in the past couple of days, President Biden and many other Western leaders have come together and starting to ship, in addition to the sanctions, which I don't think that's going to work. Putin's been waiting for this for a long time. He has a huge stockpile of cash. And of course, what he wasn't prepared for was the resistance. And maybe the Russian army isn't that well trained. They certainly have the nuclear weapons, but their day-to-day operations seem a bit incompetent. It's possible the Ukrainians will be able to stand up to them. But I think it's really important that we speak out at this time. We support them in any way possible. I'm hoping that the missiles and weapons reach them in time to help them. This was coming for a long time. They should already have these things. People are saying, "Oh, it really doesn't matter. You know, what can we do?" And this is silly. I love that comment. This is silly. Okay, it's silly. I have no response to that. One of my 5,000 friends, or maybe just one of my 6,000 followers, after I posted my comments about Mr. Trump, an extremely unpatriotic, narcissistic, evil man, and what he said about the brilliance of Mr. Putin, she responded to my comment that she would like to see Trump reelected in 2024, because when Trump was president, Putin didn't do anything. He was afraid of Trump. And if Trump was the president today, this wouldn't have happened. That's why we need Trump again in 2024 to protect us. Well, my friends, thanks for watching this video. I'm going to continue to speak out. I really don't give a fuck what anybody says to me. No one's going to put me in jail, I don't think, although anything's possible in the United States, but I'm leaving the United States. I'm going to be an expat in a matter of months for a number of reasons. I don't like the toxic situation in the United States. That's not my main reason to leave. I'm leaving because I'm going to move to a much cooler place with a lot less stress. But from my vantage point, south of the border, on the internet, and in my work as a filmmaker, I will continue to speak my truth. And my truth involves human rights. It involves the sanctity of the human condition. It involves respect for individuals. That's my mission, to speak this truth as loudly as I can in as many places as I can, as long as I'm on the planet. And after I leave here, I'm 72 now, who knows when that might be. It could be tomorrow, 20 weeks, 20 years. Maybe some of the stuff I left behind, where I speak the truth, will reach other people. I know that my jazz video guy archive, as long as people are still on the internet, will survive me, and I'm very proud of that. But I'm also proud of the fact that I'm not afraid to speak my truth. I don't worry about the consequences. And with the difficulty I'm having right now getting my film distributed and getting people in the Jewish community to support it, I don't care. What am I going to do? I just like my mentor Ben Hecht once said, I don't have any great secrets, I only know one thing: how to keep going.